Okay, I'm back, and mere seconds has elapsed. I want to talk about the what your comments were about young adult fiction. First of all, I obviously young adult fiction is not geared towards young adults. Honestly, I don't pay a lot of attention to it. I was familiar with the YA genre just because I've seen it in the bookstore, but but yeah, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. So I just assumed that if the book was said young adults, then it meant over 18. In which case, obviously they can read anything they want to read. But what you're saying is really this is aimed towards 12 to 18-year-olds, which, as we know, if you have anybody who reads at all, then readers tend to be precocious, and they are going to read things for much older people, just because that's what readers do. So I've got a lot of notes here, so I'm going to try to go through these, but I'll try to make this as cohesive as possible. I did read I didn't see any of Maureen Johnson's tweets. Just anything that calls itself a tweet, I'm uncomfortable with. But I did read Megan Gurdon's article in the Wall Street Journal, plus some responses. When she made the comment about that she feels like this fiction is dark and unsuitable for young adults, I think what she meant was it's dark and unsuitable for younger than adults, so the under 18 crowd, the 12 to 16 crowd. Because I'm not sure what the debate would be if we're trying to say, well, this is unsuitable for somebody who's 20 years old. If somebody at the age of 20 can't figure out what they're doing, then that's, I guess, really their own problem. But I was listening to what you said, and I kind of went back and listened to it again. And yeah, are you suggesting that you think a rating system would be good for books? Because I think you said that you and Sarah don't have enough time to read all the books that your kids might read. So I don't know how I feel about that. It's actually funny because I mentioned it to Duncan, and Duncan said, "Dan said that? Isn't our Dan said that?" Which I thought was pretty funny, and I think it's a compliment, by the way. And I think you said that you don't think it's, and again, correct me, I think you said that you don't necessarily think it's a God-given right to write whatever you want to write. I think there were some I think you meant to have qualifiers in there, because I think it is a God-given right to write whatever you want to write. I would love to say that the market will dictate what you can sell and what you can't. Well, I mean, of course, it's going to dictate what you can sell and what you can't. But what you're doing is I think that it seems like what we're verging on here is subject matter that we think is unsuitable should not be available. And I think those are two different issues. I think that you and Sarah do have the time to screen what your children read. Doesn't mean you need to read the whole book, but honestly, when you look at you flip through a book, you can get a little bit of flavor of what's going on in that book. You read the dust jacket. It's funny because I think when you see the YA on the book, you can just assume it's a safe bet that that's not you're not going to want your 12-year-old to read that, because of what's being placed in that genre now. I understand that there's a lot of dark stuff going on in young YA, but I think that Gurdon's real point was that it's not necessarily even it's the material as much as it is the method that is delivered. it's 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 an easy delivery. It doesn't suitably talk about the complexities of this, these dark things that are going on. But I'm not sure where you draw the line. I can understand a rating system, and of course there's going to be a ratings group, and anytime there's a ratings group, there's going to be lobbyists to the ratings group. So I'm not really sure that ratings are going to do you any good, any more than, do you simply say, oh, the movie's PG, therefore my kids can go see it, or the movie's G, so my kids can go see it. I still think we have to make some reasoned judgment as parents as to what we want our kids to see, but you and Sarah and Beth and I, are the gatekeepers. And we should not abdicate that authority to a publishing house or to a ratings judiciary panel. I think it's up to us, and I think that I don't agree with keeping materials from. Let me restate that. There's no material that's appropriate or inappropriate for a given age, because every child is at a different maturity level. And so it's really for us to decide, can my 10-year-old, my 12-year-old, my 14-year-old, once they're 15, hopefully they can make their own choices at that point, but is it appropriate for them to be reading this stuff? For that specific kid, is it appropriate for that kid at this age to be reading that? But I think more importantly, I think that what we have to do is we have to teach them. I'm going to go to my notes here. Is to teach, judgment and the ability to think and reason to our kids, so that when they come across this stuff, they can decide whether or not they want to make sense of it or not, or whether they're not going to look at it, because they're going to come across the material certainly. And so if we can teach them to think and make their own decisions about it, but I'm not I don't feel like I'm up in arms about censorship or anything. I'm not quite there, but I'm not sure. I don't really feel that a rating system is really going to do anything for you, first of all. We still have to make sure we watch what our kids watch. And it's not like you can't go and buy a book. The only thing you can't buy is pornography under the age of 18, right? Even though what they're describing is, in essence, pornography in words. And so it goes back to this sort of puritanical approach that somehow movies and pictures are inappropriate, but words are okay. When in fact, I think they're all appropriate or inappropriate. There's no bright line there. And I'm 43 and I still have no desire to see porn, or to flip through a Playboy, except, of course, for the articles on literature, which I read avidly. And it's not because I'm uncomfortable. It just doesn't interest me. It's not, where I want to be. But when you're talking about dark material, and you start thinking about what's in Shakespeare, Alice Walker's The Color Purple, The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, Catcher in the Rye, all of these have really dark and disturbing material that's in there, but it's not but they don't deal with it in a salacious way. It's the difference between dealing with a murder and then Quentin Tarantino dealing with a murder. It's just, it's not that, I'm not even sure the objection is the darkness of the material, but it's the crudeness of the delivery. You know what I mean? So, when do we, and there are parents who say, well, my children shouldn't be reading Catcher in the Rye. My children shouldn't be reading The Color Purple in high school. So, I'm reading Beloved right now by Toni Morrison, and that's some pretty heavy stuff in there. And so, at what point do we say, well, I've got a child who's really interested in literature, and I'm sorry, you can't read that until you're 18. I mean, surely we can say that, but I don't know. I'm not sure that the rating system is going to work, and I just really, when I see YA, I just think, well, there's some trash, and I don't even get it for my kids. I'll get them something different that deals with, you can deal with the same issues, but in a much more sophisticated and artful way. So one of the things Gurdon says, and I'm assuming you read her article, was that 40 years ago there was no YA only literature. And then she says some of it accessible to youth and some not. And then she stops and just kind of goes on, but I don't really know what that means, because there's literature that's still accessible to youth and some that's not. What makes something accessible or not? Well, I guess it's what we do. I mean, it's can you, is it in the schools, for one? Is it easily put in their hands? So I guess if we kept YA out of the high schools, or even out of the middle schools, would that keep them from it? Yeah, probably might. But I fear that less than I fear my children's inability to think. And I know what you mean about the stories we tell our kids, but I think we really have to be careful that we don't end up changing, what's the word? We don't end up changing history after the fact as we tell stories about what we did when we were in high school and younger. Because I think it's important to talk about those motivations and talk about those things we were involved in and the struggles that we went through, because our children learn a lot more from that. But not talking about them is not going to keep them from doing them, you know what I mean? But I was thinking about YA, and I was thinking about Quentin Tarantino and the Coen brothers. People love the Coen brothers, and Quentin Tarantino, Pulp Fiction is so great. The dialogue is so excellent. I mean, it really is a lot like saying, I read Playboy for the articles. I mean, it's the violence is so gratuitous that I don't find it even marginally interesting. I guess from a filmmaking perspective, there's some really neat things, if you know enough about filmmaking, that the Coen brothers do. But I don't enjoy those. I just simply don't. I'd rather watch some British movie with no action in it, but lots of acting. So, same thing with Simpsons and South Park. I'm going to pause right here real quick, and I'm going to come back, make some more. Hold this thought.